Okay, so I'm making this video, and the reason I'm making this video is because CoquiReport asked me to speculate on why he believes that sometimes a person receives or discovers they get these genetic groups and genetic communities by these DNA companies, 23andMe, AncestryDNA, and MyHeritageDNA, and they don't know where they came from or why they got them. And he asked me to speculate on why I believe that this is a situation in my background of something which I had no idea was going to take place and didn't anticipate whatsoever. So I got these three genetic groups from my heritage of the aftermath of the test I took in, I believe, 2020. And of these three genetic groups, two are Black American genetic groups, and one is a Puerto Rico genetic group. And the strongest of which was SouthCarolinian African American genetic group. Second strongest, Central Puerto Rico genetic group. Third strongest, Northeastern and Southern African Americans genetic groups. From strongest to least strongest in that order. The Central Puerto Rico genetic group was an additional genetic group. And what that means, if you are not predominantly of that, how can I say, ethnic group, but still share DNA with that group, you'll be placed as additional. So, but it goes to show that you still share the DNA in that group. Being that it's Central Puerto Rico, it goes to show that a lot of Puerto Ricans are walking around with me inside them. so that's what that means. I'm a Black American person. So I did a lot of studying, and the eastern side of the island is considered the more darker or blacker side of the island, genetically speaking. The western side of the island is considered the lighter complexion or whiter side of the island, genetically speaking. Of course, black people could live anywhere in Puerto Rico. Some people want to always place black people in Loíza, Puerto Rico, which is a province located right next to San Juan province. And that's not always true. You got black Puerto Ricans in Ponce, you got them in Maraguez, Lares, Fajardo, the island of Vieques, the island of Culebra. So, they're spread out and all over, so it's not depicted only in Pont and Loíza, excuse me. That's a lot of times people want to bring up. But that's the situation. Actually, according to my Heritage DNA timeline, my DNA seemed to be concentrated more so in Utuado, Puerto Rico. So we're going to keep going on from here, and I'm just going to discuss why I believe that came up. And this is just some speculation on why I believe that came up. And I want to say, while there has been much written on the Atlantic slave trade, there's been very little written, and this is a part one. I want to say this part one. I might make a part two to this. There's been very little written on the intra-American slave trade between the American nations or regions within themselves that has been documented and published and spread out to internationally on and concerning why we get so little of that today. So a lot of a lot of scholars seem to not have concentrated on that area of study, or at least not brought a lot of those documents up on the slaves that were in the Caribbean and maybe came to America, went to parts of Central America. A good example of that would be many Jamaicans and other Caribbean, Afro-Caribbeans who went to Panama to help build the Panama Canal at the start of the 20th century. And a lot of them remain there to this day. And some have English surnames still in Panama, and they're Panamanians. And those would be considered the Afro-Antillean Panamanians. While you have Panamanians inside Panama itself, were a little more native, have been there for centuries before they came along, and those are the colonial Panamanians. So we're going to get back to what I'm trying to discuss here. And I want to say, maybe, like I said, I want to consider this a part one. I may go into a little more documentation and study on a video I once saw earlier, a few years ago, here on YouTube, in which a discussion was taking place about Afro-Puerto Ricans, and the son of a professor, I can't remember the name at this time, relayed that there was a period in American history during the 19th century when both lighter-skinned Puerto Ricans and Cubans, whiter ones, migrated to America, and they established tobacco shops in the northern regions of the USA, New York, Philadelphia, Boston, and other regions. And their darker-skinned, more Negroid, I'm going to say Afro-Cuban and Puerto Rican or Puertorriqueños counterparts settled the southern areas of the United States, where they would pick tobacco side by side with the Black American population in those southern states. And those two groups would jointly ship tobacco to northern shops to make money. And doing that joint picking up tobacco, treating it, and shipping it out, there would be intermarriages between the two groups and relations between the two groups. And if that's the situation, if that's true, that could potentially be one source of why there's this Puerto Rican DNA is coming up in my as a genetic group for me with MyHeritage. It's just an example. In short, Puerto Ricans immigrated to the United States in the 18th and or 19th centuries for this to take place. The problem with this theory is that the son of this professor I'm talking about is it's hard to find information on it. So it's hard to go into it for me to provide more information on that as a source of what's going on in my own DNA population pool. The second theory is just the opposite. Oftentimes during slavery in the United States, slaves would sometimes immigrate to portions of the Caribbean seeking a better life. And some of that took place actually in the New Orleans region from Haiti, where there was an exchange between the Haitian Revolution period of 1804 to, I'm going to go all the way up to 1830, where some Black Americans went down to Haiti, and some Haitians came up and settled the Louisiana, New Orleans area. And you can read about that in history. So there was exchanges that took place like that. When it comes to other regions of the Caribbean, I'm not so sure what was taking place there. But I would say that sometimes Black Americans were sent to the Caribbean because they wanted to be broken. They were considered a little more rebellious and what have you. And that could be another reason why my DNA would be found in Puerto Rico. I'm just speculating here. The third theory is during the Atlantic slave trade, a portion of my family could have been broken up. And coming in from Africa, a portion settled the southern United States of America, and another portion settled in Puerto Rico itself. And that would explain why my DNA is being found inside Puerto Rico. But I will say this, for that to have happened is significant, have a heavy impact, because if there's like 10 people with my DNA walking around in Puerto Rico, 20, that's not going to give me no genetic group. It would have to be massive, or hundreds of people walking around in Puerto Rico where I'm sharing their DNA and they're sharing my DNA. And to create that genetic group, and MyHeritage explains that on the amount of kits that they use. It'll be 300, 400, 500, whatever it's going to be. And that's how they would determine the strength levels, whether it's high confidence, medium confidence, or low confidence, whenever you get those genetic groups, because those genetic groups, unlike ethnicity estimates, don't come in percentages where you have a percentage of these people here and a percentage of those people there, a percentage of those people there. You're either in that genetic group or you're not a part of that genetic group. And those genetic groups go back about 50 to say, can go back as far as 500 years. All right, and they measure that by the amount of generations going back. MyHeritage stops at the 5th generation. So if it goes back to them, they don't post it. So that's the third reason that my DNA could be found in Puerto Rico when that Central Puerto Rico genetic group was coming out. One of the things I could say about Central Puerto Rico a lot of times is where black slaves hid from the conquistadors and the conquerors. They went up to the mountains, mixed in with the Taino Indians. How can I say? And they settled in that region, and they stayed there with the Taino Indians, who befriended them, and they let them live among them. It was a way they can go to hide themselves. Now, the fourth reason about my DNA could be in Puerto Rico is, I'm just speculating, I studied various settlements of Puerto Rico, and that includes both royal decrees of graces, the 1789 Royal Decree of Grace as well as the 1815 Royal Decree of Grace. During the 1815 Royal Decree of Grace, you had mixed Puerto Rican population along with slaves that was already there, black people that was already there, and the Europeans, sort of what Joe Biden wanted to do, increase the flow of Europeans into Puerto Rico itself to accrue the European population there. And please excuse that, that's my phone ringing, and what I'm going to do is allow them to leave a message, because I can't take that phone call right now. I'm trying to record this. So, and that's what happened. They sought to accrue the European population so that the mixed population wouldn't grow as large as that European population. So during the Spanish Royal Decree of Graces of 1815, a lot of Europeans flowed more into Puerto Rico south, from Portugal, from Spain, from Italy, from Germany, from France, mostly Corsica, and from parts of, I believe, Scotland and Ireland especially. They flowed into Puerto Rico, and as well as Germany, and they settled various areas of Puerto Rico. And that's one of the things they did. Like me being a Black American, I would have no visible admixture. You have to do it. I would have to show DNA test results for when to see something like that. But I'm using that as an example to show that there was a lot of immigration settling in Puerto Rico during that time. So sometimes you have Puerto Ricans who don't only have Spanish or Portuguese surnames, but sometimes you have Irish and German mixed in with Puerto Ricans, and that comes as a surname, and it's sometimes included in the Spanish last name as well. It's mixed in with that. I'm just talking about surnames, and sometimes there's a history in those surnames. So during the Haitian Revolution of 1804, many Haitians fled during that revolution into Puerto Rico, including some of the French soldiers. Sometimes fled into Puerto Rico itself, and not only did they flee into Puerto Rico, but they fled also into New Orleans. Talk about the Black Haitians fled into New Orleans, where they helped assimilate and blend into that population pool to create a ethnogenesis among the Creoles of New Orleans who were already there. So they also fled into parts of South Carolina, into Florida, into Philadelphia, and other settlements along America's east coast. So those Puerto Ricans assimilated to those Haitians, who came into Puerto Rico, assimilated into Puerto Rico to become Puerto Ricans. The uprising of Lares, Puerto Rico in 1868 involved many Afro-Puertorriqueños of Haitian descent. You can look that up in history. So I'm wondering, maybe there's some type of connection there. The problem with this theory is I have no genetic connection to Haiti whatsoever. I have 3 genetic groups and 2 Black American genetic groups. Like I said, that ties back to Black American regions, Puerto Rico regions, Black American regions. It makes sense because my parents are from here in the United States, from the southern regions of the United States. So, according to AI research, those Haitian Puerto Ricans have blended Puerto Rican DNA or genetically to be established as full-fledged Puerto Ricans, meaning that if you were to test them, it's going to go back to Puerto Rico, not Haiti. So, and I want to say this for some people who say, while there is a large influx of Dominicans in Puerto Rico today that settled Carolina, my throat, Carolina, Puerto Rico, a lot of those Haitians are more contemporary arrivals. So my thing is like, you'll be able to tell. You can't hide that when they're doing these genetic groups and genetic communities, whether it's 23andMe, MyHeritageDNA, or AncestryDNA. You could take a Puerto Rican person, they go over to China, they test over there, they're still going to tie back to Puerto Rico. The matter of fact, during Puerto Rico migration, when many Puerto Ricans, came to New York City in the 1930s, 40s, 50s, at that same time, Puerto Rico was also settling Hawaii. So if you were to genetically test those Puerto Ricans in Hawaii, it's still going to go back to Puerto Rico as a genetic group or genetic community. It's not going to be Native Hawaiian. It's going to go back to Puerto Rico. And that's what scientists and geneticists are going to trace that DNA to. So moving on, finally, there's the fifth reason. There's the Spanish Edict of 1664. That edict attracted black people from neighboring Caribbean islands, Jamaica and Haiti, and to a lesser extent, Afro-Caribbeans from other islands in the Caribbean to Puerto Rico South under the promise of land rights for labor. Genetic groups and genetic communities, like I said, go back centuries, so this tie is not far-fetched. From there, centuries later, immigrants to the United States probably took place where they brought this DNA with them. But again, as far as I know, I have no genetic connection to Haiti or Jamaica on a large scale for it to fit into some type of genetic group. But as I aforementioned, any descendants would no longer genetically be considered from those islands due to an ethnogenesis, since it was long ago for them to live on Puerto Rico for a blend to take place, unlike with Afro-Antilleans in Panama. Afro-Antilleans in Panama, DNA usually still traces back to Panama, Barbados, and other Caribbean islands. Whereas Afro-Antilleans in Panama, for example, just using this for an example or an analogy, traces back to Panama itself. Both are black groups. But anyway, so these Haitians or Jamaicans have been there super long in Puerto Rico for centuries. They blended into the mainstream Puerto Rican population pool to still be considered Puerto Ricans. So those are my theories. And incidentally, my woman is of Puerto Rican descent. So when that came up in my genetic, as a genetic group for me, we both were surprised by it. So that's my discussion here for today, and that's what I want to say. Thank you, and have a blessed day.